Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining this particular interview. This is once again Iowa Prison Perspectives. I'm Sue Hutchins, and for those of you who have been here before, you already know that this is a collaboration between Living Beyond the Bars of Iowa, Iowa Cure, and the Iowa Justice Action Network. The purpose of this channel is to inform you, the public, and to get feedback from you, the public, about what goes on in the prison system in Iowa and surrounding states. The people that are interviewed in a variety of different ways on this particular channel are people who have been incarcerated, people who have loved ones who are incarcerated or have been incarcerated, people who have worked at one time or another for the Department of Corrections, and people who are advocates or part of a reentry community for folks who are coming out of prison. This evening is going to be a little bit different than the other interviews that I have done, in that tonight we're going to be focusing on one person in particular whose name is Michael Blackwell, and he is currently incarcerated at Fort Dodge Correctional Facility. And we have a panel tonight who knows Michael and has known Michael for years, and is going to speak about what they know about him and how he has grown and how he has changed and how they believe that he deserves a second chance, which I agree with. I agree that Michael is one of the people who deserves a second chance. I was part of writing the bill 3 years ago that would have changed the commutation process in Iowa, and that's how I met Michael. And in the course of the last 3 years, at least, I speak to him regularly, and I'm the author of 6 books that are a compilation of different prisoners' writings, and he's in several of those books. I really have a lot of respect for Michael. I also listened to a lot of commutation interviews with the pro board, and I listened to Michael's commutation interview. And in the course of that interview, he got 4 yeses and 1 no. Everybody, all of the men and women on the parole board, all 5 of them, were very, very impressed with Michael and very impressed with the growth that he has made, and also with the program that he wrote and implemented that was called Negative to Positive, which we're going to hear more about tonight. He was highly, highly respected by the men and women on the parole board, and they felt like he really deserved a second chance and a commutation. The 1 no vote was because of the fact that he has murder in his history, and Iowa judges they put a lot of weight on the nature of the crime, and because it was murder. The one man who said no hesitated to say yes, although he said he wanted to say yes, but he really hesitated because of the murder. So I think that really merits some consideration for Michael and a variety of other people who are in that same situation. I'm a retired therapist, and in my work as a therapist for 50 plus years, I dealt with a lot of people who had been through trauma and had trauma in their histories and trauma in their adult life. I don't know anybody in prison, and I worked for the federal prison system in Las Cruces, New Mexico, prior to coming back to Iowa. And now I've been involved with the Iowa prison system. And I don't know anybody in prison, incarcerated, or who has been in prison, or a family member who has anybody in prison who hasn't experienced quite a bit of trauma, severe trauma. And if they hadn't had a lot of trauma prior to prison, they certainly have had once they are incarcerated. I think that is an area that really merits our consideration in the future. And we should have been doing something about this for years and years and years. But we really need to pay some attention to that in the future. And there is a syndrome, post-incarceration syndrome, that actually is very, very similar to post-traumatic stress disorder that therapists throughout the country are beginning to be trained in and actually working with people who have been incarcerated in states other than Iowa. We don't have anybody in Iowa doing that yet. In my opinion, Iowa tends to be a little behind the behind the lead in a lot of things when it comes to system work. The similarities between incarceration and war are very, very similar as far as the effects on a person's psychology. And so I think that really merits consideration by the public and also by the therapists that work with people who are coming out of prison. So tonight we're going to be talking specifically about Michael Blackwell, and we're going to be hearing his story and hearing from people who know him and have known him for quite a while. What I really hope for you, the public, is that as you listen to this, you will hear the trauma, you will hear the how Michael has handled that, and you will also hear how he has turned his life around. Not only how he has handled it, but what he has actually done to turn his life around and to help other people turn their lives around, which is certainly true of Michael and also true of a number of lifers. So with that, I will turn it over to Corey, and she is going to read Michael's paper that we will be talking about this evening. So Corey, it's all yours.
Thank you, Sue. It feels like a privilege to be able to do this, to be able to have this conversation, and especially to read Michael's story. I started volunteering at the Writers' Workshop at Oakdale, or IMCC, in 2014, and I met Michael not too long after that, whenever he came and joined the Writers' Workshop, and we quickly became friends and still are to this day. He was an amazing writer. He was and is, and we connected over our love of words and of silly jokes. And he had a great sense of humor. And I learned that he is one of the most like proactive, productive, smart, compassionate people that I've ever met. And he wrote and still writes songs and sermons and letters and poems and essays. And when I was volunteering there, he also helped organize this evening of music and poetry and writing and performance called Speak Your Truth. And the whole community was invited in for that. And so he helped host that 3 different times that I can remember. So yeah, he has become a friend of mine, and I supported his commutation and find it to be, like I said, just a privilege to be able to read his story and for people able to be able to hear his words and his perspective and his thoughts. So I'm going to read a personal essay that Michael wrote called "The Value of a Reformed Murderer." In 1991, at 21 years old, I murdered 2 people. It was brutal, senseless, inexcusable. During that time, I was trapped in a mindset devoid of feeling. My humaneness had gradually frozen over in years prior. Although I functioned, I was far from actually living. I had learned to mask it well. I could laugh, work, even make love, but inside I was hollow, disturbed. I was not always this way. I used to be a compassionate, affable, life of the party type of guy. What changed me? Trauma. It enslaved me. Trauma took me to a place where I believed that picking up a baseball bat and beating 2 people to death was the only way to end the pain I felt. The pain they tried to understand. The pain they wanted to help me get through. Instead, I killed them. I was sentenced to life in prison. How did I descend into that mindset? In October of 1984, I came home and found my grandfather murdered. Before the police were called, I was told, keep your mouth shut, and sent down the street so I wouldn't be interviewed. Then 2 years and 4 months later, a police officer checking abandoned structures noticed feet in the doorway of an outside basement stairwell. Those feet belonged to my mother, who had been dumped there 2 days earlier. Please understand. Their deaths are no excuse for the lives I ended 4 years later. I only share my tragedies to provide insight into what two main components comprised the mind of this killer: how mental and emotional trauma, solely internalized, will destroy the future and birth an enslaved to pain mindset. Component one: the initial shock of seeing the blood splatters on the bottom of the TV stand and VCR, the large oak chest and nightstand, became exacerbated when I saw his beaten, bloody, and swollen face, his salt and pepper hair now salt and crimson. I froze. My mind took a snapshot, and his image became seared in my mind's eye. From that moment on, I wanted to forget what I had seen, but memory has no on and off switch. I wanted to scream, but I was told to remain silent. I internalized it. While awake, I could see his face in other people, so I would close my eyes. When I tried to sleep, I saw him lying in the pool of blood that had saturated the green carpet, so I stayed awake. Sometimes I could hear him ask me for help. This is the headspace I secretly lived in for almost 2.5 years. Then my mother's body was found. Component two: although not visual, the discovery of my mother's body on February 24th had a comparable, if not greater, impact, but in a different way. The image of her feet always remained vivid because of my overactive imagination, but it was the details of her time of death that affected me profoundly. When the coroner revealed that she had been there for 2 days, estimating her death around February 22nd after 6 p.m., two truths instantaneously came to mind. First, I was the last family member to speak to my mom on the day she died. Second, I lied to her. My mother asked me to come pick her up on the 22nd at 6 p.m. so we could discuss our differences of late. I knew when I hung up the phone that I wasn't going to show up. I wanted to punish her one more time for telling me the truth about myself, with the intention of going to see her in the next day or two. Furthermore, when she said, "Michael, Mama loves you, boy," I replied, "Okay," and hung up the phone. In that moment of learning the coroner's details, I knew I would never get to apologize. I knew I would never get to tell her, "I love you too." For 20 years, I carried the guilt and shame. Every day, I wondered if I had showed up, would she still be alive? The answer is always a resounding yes in my mind. Then in 2007, in the visiting room at the Newton Correctional Facility, I told my sister and stepfather the truth. These thoughts and visions were an anvil on my existence. No matter what I did, I couldn't remove or get used to the weight. It just kept getting heavier and heavier. I spiraled down into this hopelessness, this bottomless, guilt-filled abyss where I resented the people who noticed and those who didn't. In my mind, I created a world where only I mattered. I pretended to love and care outside of that world because I felt as if everyone pretended to love and care for me. Cynicism turned to anger on its way to madness. And since I couldn't stop hurting, I wanted everyone else to hurt, but couldn't tell them why. They were supposed to know automatically. My victims tried to understand, but in my twisted perception, I kept receiving it as if they were only trying to get information to hurt me further. I always believed that everyone was out to hurt me. That is why I didn't seek help. Anything surrounding mental health back then was considered a sign of weakness, especially in the Black community. Most Black households followed the same creed. What goes on in this house stays in this house. The enslaved to pain mentality is conceived in the marriage between unexpected trauma and non-existent or inadequate therapy. In the life of a child or adolescent who experiences a violent, traumatic event, the connection between them and normalcy is drastically altered and sometimes completely severed. When trauma's impact is left inadequately explored, forcibly suppressed, or completely untreated, it causes periodic detachments from reality, which in turn creates a dependence on contrived therapeutic remedies designed by an immature mind. As we age, the problems we face are common to the age range, But our known survival tactics are grossly limited and inept because we retrieve them from that mentally younger place previously stunted by trauma. Thus, we discover we have developed survival strategies that enslave us to a cycle that is detrimental to healing. For the child or teen who experiences the violence inherent in the murder of a primary love source, the end result is a shock. It is violent to the psyche. It provokes survival instincts. When left untreated or unexplored, these traumas can enslave someone to a cycle of pain. In my case, the recurrence of the visions, guilt, and shame kept me retrieving the solution from my 15-year-old mind. Keep your mouth shut. I had survived by doing so for 6 years. Had I opened up to someone who could first establish a connection with me, the most powerful connection being relatability, and alerted them to the violence going on in my troubled mind, I would have accepted the guidance and support to nourish and cultivate the development of age-appropriate solutions that would have prevented murder. There are thousands, if not millions, of people who are enduring trauma on diverse levels that are keeping their mouths shut. What I need people to understand is that the deeply troubled, violent, and unremorseful mind plaguing many people today probably originates from trauma. Whether it be racism, police brutality, inequality, an abusive or absentee parent, bullying, or all of the above. The repetition of it is a recurring trauma. So, in society, help should begin. Some may ask, isn't the work of changing lives needed in prison? And why do you need to get out to do this work? The answer to the first question, yes, this work is needed in here. That's why a few of us do what we can. The answer to the second question is a bit complicated. We have to be completely outside the power of the Iowa Department of Corrections. Please allow me to expound. Various professionals have articulated the crucial role environment plays in the development of a criminal mind and its subsequent behavior. What is often overlooked or ignored altogether is the role prison environments play in the process of rehabilitation. Empirically speaking, many DOC officials and prison administrations intentionally refuse to cultivate environments of healing and rehabilitation. They effectively hinder, if not outright deny, support for the very few prisoners, counselors, administrators, and correctional officers who attempt to inject positivity or implement meaningful programs into the prison community. Understanding this, and while under the indirect tutelage of progressive-minded warden Jim McKinney, I founded a mentoring program called Negative to Positive. This was a 3-phase program designed to penetrate that hard exterior common to prisoners, get to those vulnerable places, and commence healing. It was modeled after my own transformation process, which was facilitated by a few of my then fellow gang members who have experienced and or committed murder, and a select few prison administrators and staff who not only understood and operated in a rehabilitative mindset, but recognized the good in me that I had abandoned. Their unlikely encouragement was seeds and water that enabled me to accept the growth God provided when I gave my life to Christ in 2006. Many people in society correctly assume that the world of prison is a tsunami of negativity opposed to positive change. However, what society does not grasp is that this wave is generated by both sides, prisoner and staff. It is comprised of some prisoners who seek to control and dominate the weak, and some prison staff and administrators who use their positions of power to inflict pain on and perpetrate anger in the prison population. These are many systems that operate within prisons, gangs or cliques, sexual predators, sadists, etc., that have no empathy for trauma because they often remain trapped in their own. An enslaved mind coming into prison for the first time unwittingly exists at the mercy of these many systems. Once in prison, correcting, rehabilitating, and healing are no longer the primary goals. For the prisoner, it becomes survival. For many staff, it becomes maintaining power by punishing, dehumanizing, demonizing, and oppressing prisoners. Both sides are governed by peer pressure and comply for acceptance. When the enslaved to pain mind becomes intertwined with these many systems of prisons, the union conceives a recidivist, This is why help before prison is paramount. It has two monumental benefits. First, it prevents people from being hurt or killed. Second, it changes the trajectory of a traumatized life. As a mentally reformed murderer who has experienced, endured, and learned how to employ constructive techniques to survive the gang life, the prison world, and both sides of murder, I understand how to navigate the barriers and roadblocks, open the right doors, and which walls to climb over, go around, or crash through to get to the nucleus of pain. I have honed the skill of taking the hand of the hurt and walking them out of their enslavement with dignity. My story commands their ears and creates an instantaneous connection. Their perverted respect for my past brutality will establish a credibility that authenticates my message of where their enslaved mind is taking them. On the flip side, it also establishes a credibility that authenticates my message of where escaping an enslaved mind could lead them. This generates hope. Many enslaved, like myself at the time, do not know they are enslaved to pain. I help them see it, acknowledge it, understand it, and work through it. Once they know that I came from wearing a toilet paper dress in a padded cell to speaking before prosecutors, judges, politicians, and some of the most prestigious academic minds from a Division I university while in prison, then they can believe that a better, more positive life can be realized without the violence that results in a prison experience. After spending almost 3.5 decades in prison and gradually escaping the enslaved to pain mindset that descended into mental illness, gang participation, and murder, I have gained a unique insight, an insight that compelled me to become a certified mentor with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, to work with gang members to see life from a different, more respectable perspective, and to create the Negative to Positive program. I love to help people acknowledge, understand, and ultimately escape an enslaved to pain lifestyle. My experiences have created a dual understanding, dual citizenship in both hemispheres of those previously mentioned worlds. From a perpetrator and survivor perspective, I understand how mental and emotional trauma causes physical pain, fills you with emptiness, supplies helplessness, and generates a desire for relief that oftentimes compels desperate, destructive thoughts and actions. It is two sides of the same coin. This dual understanding ushers in the ability to reach the enslaved, violent, destructive mindset, no matter its source. It is a labyrinth I have mastered and accepted the role of tour guide, tasked with leading people through and out of a hopeless place. I started with myself. I know the process intimately. Commuting the sentences of releasing and utilizing lifers who demonstrate a positive mental transformation with a true heart for mentoring will not only save lives, but also save the taxpayers $32,000 a year. In the Des Moines Register article, Hearing Set on Lifers Bid for Release, William Petrosky informed us that 224 death or life sentences have been commuted in the state of Iowa since 1949. He wrote, on average, these prisoners had served 24.5 years. Only 4 of the 224 went on to reoffend. 3 of the inmates were later paroled again. That is a 1.78% recidivism rate. With support and permission from a member of my victim's family, I filed for commutation in 2019. Unfortunately, my efforts were thwarted by a staff setup that Governor Reynolds used, unwittingly, I believe, as her sole reason for denial in 2021. Today, I am still committed to and engrossed in the battle to save more lives than I have taken. I recognize society's need for someone who understands the fabric of the angry, violent, destructive, enslaved to pain mindset, who intimately knows how to reach those suffering silently and guide them toward embracing change. If given a second chance at freedom, I intend to continue building the Negative to Positive brand, not only in prisons, but also schools, rehab centers, and in the realm of domestic violence, working with abusers. I would start in Iowa, expand it nationally, and eventually globally. Commutation by a governor would be the most effective way for this reformed murderer to impact society positively. History confirms I'm not likely to waste the chance. That's the end of Michael's piece. And I guess before others jump in, I also would just say that in reading it, I was reminded and just kind of like struck again by the memory of being with Michael in the writer's workshop and how he was so open and forthright and honest and vulnerable about his life, about his story, about what he had done, about all that he had been through afterwards, too, about his process and his transformation. And um, it was remarkable, and it really opened up a space for vulnerability and openness and compassion in the room and among all of the other writers who were there, incarcerated and outside volunteers as well. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Corey. It's a very, very touching and honest story. And he has a very dynamic way of saying what he believes needs to happen. And as a trauma therapist, retired trauma therapist, I believe that what he is speaking of as far as his approach is totally accurate. I think that there is a way that a person who has been there can reach people that someone who hasn't been there just simply can't reach them in the same way. There's a connection that happens among people who have actually had shared experiences that those of us who really care about people but don't have that shared experience really can't reach that same place in a person's heart and be that same kind of meaningful and dynamic. So I really thank you very much for participating and for being willing to read this paper for us. And does anybody have anything that you would like to say about this paper before we move on?
I just like to say that hearing it read out loud, and Corey, you read it very, very well, very expressively, reminded me of all the strengths of Michael's writing. I mean, we have heard in the workshop, we heard various versions of this. He came back to the same topics often and told some of the same stories in different contexts. But I think he finally put it all together in such a well organized and well argued way. And I told him right after first reading this, my first response to him was, "This is the best statement. This is the most complete and the most powerful statement you have made yet of all these ideas." He really brought them together. And you could hear in the writing, not only is he follow rigorous logic and supports it with facts and informed opinions about psychology, people's psychology. But he has writes with such a poetic flair. He has such a way with words. I just love the enslaved to pain phrase. I mean, that is, to me, that is the power of Michael's writing in a nutshell.
Anybody else want to comment on the writing? If not, we'll move on. Do you want to say anything, Sheree?
I just wanted to say that to follow up what Phil had said, I had the opportunity to read that piece, but Corey, the way Corey delivered it was amazing. On top of the writing itself already being amazing, Michael is a brilliant, I mean, and that's an understatement to me. I may be a little biased, but he's a brilliant writer. Very captivating, and I mean, it's unbelievable, absolutely magnificent.
I think what touches me most is he really speaks from his heart as well as from his mind. And that is a rare ability in people. So, Ron, would you care to talk about what you're going to speak on about Michael?
Sure. Well, first
introduce yourself. Yeah, introduce
thank you
yourself.
for the opportunity to talk about Michael. He's an amazing person. Anybody that knows him at this point knows that he doesn't belong in prison. He's his gifts are being wasted there. Um, so thank you for putting this together, Sue, and thank you, Corey, for such a beautiful reading. And as you heard from the reading, Michael went through a lot of early trauma in his childhood and early years, and through that trauma, and working through that, he ended up committing some just terrible crimes. And he doesn't hide that. He's very clear about that. He doesn't try to put that to hide that from anybody. He's very open about his crimes and how terrible they were. So of course, as a result of those crimes, he went to prison. And for several years, he talks about, and he kind of mentioned that in the essay. He talks about his negativity and his way of dealing with the trauma that he'd been through. But then at some point, he realized he had to change. He talks about changing his negative mindset, as he talked in the essay about his enslavement to pain. And so he put a lot of work and a lot of thought into changing himself, going from negative to positive, as he says. And so he founded this organization, which he's asked me to talk about, called Negative to Positive, which he talks about in the piece too. The germ of that came about, I think, when he was first in Anamosa before he came to IMCC. He became a mentor to the younger prisoners and sort of used his trajectory to teach others how to change their mindset from negative to positive. Then when he came to IMCC, the prison here in Coralville, he was given the latitude by the warden that he mentions, James McKinney, who is just an amazing person, a great warden who did a lot of good for a lot of people. He was given the latitude to start the program and make it a more official program. So he called it Negative to Positive. That became his job in prison, was to be the administrator of this program. And he formalized things. He came up with different steps. He actually, along with some of his co-workers, came up with a brochure, Negative to Positive, and a logo. He has this whole brochure that talks about the program, and then they other prisoners would pick this up and read it, and if they thought that was for them, they could join the program. And he helped a lot of people with this program. They had fundraising efforts. They sold snacks in the commissary to raise funds. They made T-shirts, which I'm proud to be sporting right now as we speak. Oh, and there's the other one, which he sold to people inside, as well as a lot of his volunteers bought them to support his work. And he did a lot of good, and he used his own experience as a template for how to change from negative to positive. And as he says in the piece, he would, if he were outside, he could do so much to keep people from committing those crimes. If someone would have come to him when he was hurting from his childhood trauma, if someone would have come to him with this program, it would have not only saved Michael from prison, but it would have saved 2 people from dying young. Unfortunately, he's not able to do that now. He still can do a lot of good inside by helping people. But by the time he's able to have access to these people, it's kind of too late for them. It's not too late to change, but it's too late to undo the crime that put them there. But that, that just goes back to the Iowa, and it's not just Iowa, but the mentality of prison as revenge rather than reform. And we have such a non-existent mental health system in Iowa and other states that it makes it really difficult for people going through these kinds of trauma when they're young to change before bad things happen. So that's, in a nutshell, that's negative to positive. He has great ambitions if he were to get out to, like he said, continue the branding and expand nationally. And it could be a good program. It is a good program. It could help a lot of people. So that's it in a nutshell. I guess I should have introduced myself. I'm Ron Pyle. I've known Michael. I was also in the writers' workshop. I joined in, I think, 2015 or 2016, and was there till they closed it down, and got rid of Warden McKinney, who did such good work, and all these programs that he had started are not there anymore. All those programs are gone. So, but it's been just a life-changing experience to get to know Michael and some of the other guys in there, but Michael in particular. It just impresses everybody he touches with his honesty and his openness and his good cheer in such a bleak place. That's all I have.
Sue, you're muted.
Okay, now am I not?
Yeah.
I'm
You're
having
good.
a heck of a time. I tell you, bear with me, guys. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that, and appreciate you being here and what you had to say and your backing of Michael and the program. I will also add to that in listening to Michael's commutation interview that was several years ago, the board unanimously was very impressed with that program of negative to positive, and very impressed with Michael and the way that he would deliver that program. And all five of them said that they would like to see that happen out here. And when he gets out, they said, when you get out at some point, I believe you will be out at some point. When you get out, I look forward to knowing more about this program. So I think that also merits mention. And I think that people who have any kind of interest in the criminal justice system and would like to see some people who really deserve a second chance, instead of just giving it lip service, if people in the public would get involved and actually join different organizations, or write your Congress people, write your state legislators, your state senators, and tell them that you really think that there are people who deserve commutation and you would like to see that happen. That would be helpful. That's the kind of thing that we need, is to make people who can make this happen, make it happen. So with that, I will turn it over to Phil, who has known Michael for a number of years and is going to talk about what he knows about Michael.
Hey, thank you, Sue. As the others have said, it's a real privilege to be here. I really appreciate that you invited me and included me in this, because I am a big fan of Michael Blackwell, as I will expound upon. Um, I first got to know him, like Corey and Ron, in the writers' workshop. I was the last one to join, I believe. They'd both been there before me. And unfortunately, I was only there for about a year and a half before they closed it down, ostensibly because of the pandemic. But I kept in touch with Michael. There was a period when we weren't connecting. He had been transferred out of IMTC to Anamosa shortly before the closing of IMCC, and we lost touch. But then after a few months, we reestablished contact. I know other people did too. He was in touch with a lot of people from the workshop, and that's been, wow, 3 years, over 3 years now of writing to him and having him write back and getting phone calls from him. I'm really grateful that he phones me, and I can't phone in. We can't phone in, but he does call me frequently, and we talk, and it's just wonderful to hear his voice. Because if you know Michael, one of the most wonderful features is his voice. It's filled with joy. He is. I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he stays so positive and so upbeat and sounds so happy and joyous. But I think it's because he just loves people. He loves talking to people, and that's what I first experienced in the writers' workshop. A lot of the guys there were very friendly and very warm, and they were very happy and grateful that we were coming in to see them. But nobody expressed it more enthusiastically than Michael. He didn't want us to leave. You know, when the hour was over, he would stay. He would come outside the library. We met in the library, and he would stand there in the hallway talking to all of us. And we had to get going, but he was like, he didn't want to see us go. He just wanted to talk, and what he talked about was good. He was just such a very open, as people have said, open, warm-hearted, warm, and genuine person. I mean, one of the most amazing things to me about listening to this paper today and reading other things and hearing him talk openly about his past is I can't, knowing him as he is now, I can't even imagine him as an angry, bitter, violent person. It just seems impossible to see him that way. It is impossible for me because I experienced this very happy and joyful person. He just exudes positive energy. He really has changed from negative to positive in every way you can imagine. And such an intelligent person. I mean, I know he's probably largely self-schooled, but he's taken, among the other things he did, besides negative to positive, was he was attending school at IMCC. He was taking classes in what is it, the lab program. And as he was very proud of that, he maintained a very high GPA. I think he said it was something like 3.75. So he was making the most of his time in all sorts of ways. He was always like practically the first one there at the writers' workshop, one of the first ones there. I think he only missed one every now and then, very, very infrequently, because he just loved being there, and he loved sharing his writing, and he loved commenting on other people's writing, and he commented well. He was a good critic and a good question asker as well as a good writer. And although I was never part, he was also a member of the Oakdale Choir that was led by Dr. Mary Cohn there, which was got a lot of attention and a lot of fame for the work she was doing. She's a University of Iowa professor of music, and a lot has been written about it. There's been a documentary film, The Inside Singers, made about it, which has won awards. So this was a very prestigious group. And Michael, you probably aren't going to be able to see him well in here, but this is a picture of Dr. Cohn leading the choir, and Michael is right there Do I have the right one? Michael is right there in the center of things, of course. He was a devoted member of that very renowned choir and loved to sing and is very musical. As Corey mentioned, he's written songs. Um, he's written a couple songs that have won awards, and some of his writing have won awards. So what I remember most about Michael was just his enthusiasm, his friendliness, the fact that when you talked to him, you felt like he was giving you a bear hug all the time, even though he wasn't. And the the joy I experienced talking to him today, I'm just very grateful that he calls me. It's always great to hear his voice and to talk to him. And as I said, I don't know how he can remain so positive, given the difficulties that he exists in, and he's gone through some terrible difficulties in Anamosa and at Fort Dodge. But he still remains upbeat. He still remains positive. He still remains committed. He's no longer able to have the negative to positive group inside. When they went to Anamosa, they refused to allow him to recreate that program there. But he still talks to people. He still mentors people informally, and he tells me and others about this that when these young guys first come there, he tries to talk to them. He's continuing to do his work. And this is the amazing thing about it is that he doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to do all of this stuff.
Right.
He could build a case for commutation and release just on what he's done in the past. He's not getting credit for it now, but he continues to do it because he loves it, because he believes in it. He's sincere. He's genuine. He is as good as his word. What he says he believes in and feels and does is absolutely true. And that genuineness is what impresses me most about him. He is a very loving person, and he loves to be with people. He loves to give to people, and that's what he continues to do. He gives to me every time I get a mail from him or a phone call, and I hope I give a little back. I try. And
Thank you, Phil. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And now we will hear from almost lifelong friend of Michael's.
Yes.
Sharitha, it's all yours.
Thank you. Again, just as the others have said, it's a pleasure to be here and an honor. I got a call from Michael, and he had asked me if I would be willing to participate, and without hesitation, I said yes. Again, my name is Sharitha Green. I met Michael in 1983. So I've known Michael from a very young boy up until this very moment. So that's over half of a lifetime. And I've seen Michael go through his paces, rise and fall. I've had the opportunity to visit him. It's been quite a while because I had been out of touch with him after things had transpired with his crimes. But going back to when I met him in 1983, happy-go-lucky young man, um, that smile that he has, and that laugh. He had this amazing laugh, and it was very contagious. But behind that laugh and that smile, as I got to know Michael, there was pain, and you could see it in his eyes and the sadness. And Michael wanted to be loved and accepted, and there were just things that he went through in his life from a young man, young child, even, as Corey had shared in the reading, as Michael had shared with everyone through that writing, the tragedies that he'd experienced. I met him right before that first tragedy that was mentioned, where he found his grandfather, witnessed his grandfather, the brutality that happened with his grandfather, and then turned around and what he went through with the experience of his mother, and the piece that he mentioned of having a conversation with her and he was supposed to go and pick her up. I never knew of that until I read this writing. So it kind of took me aback just a little bit of how he would keep everything inside because there was no outlet for him. As he stated, it's historically what goes on in this house stays in this house. So he had no release. So I would watch Michael hit these plateaus of where he was great, and then I would see him fall, and he would struggle and almost crying out for help in a sense. And then I would watch him rise again, and then he would fall, and he would fall away from me as a friend. I wouldn't hear from him, and I'd try to track him and find out where he was. And Michael, he always wanted to do good. He's always wanted to do good, but there was something there that he just could not get a hold of. And I've watched him, like I said, over the years, from seeing him struggle as a young man through the darkness and then through light and then back into darkness. Um, it's amazing to see because, as I believe Phil had said, he can't imagine seeing this young man being angry. And to be truthful, I didn't really see that, but I knew it was there. Because with me, it was a safe space. And Michael would feel free. He had told me before he would feel free and he would feel light when he was with me. But I knew that he was struggling. Um, After Michael had committed those crimes, which, like Phil said, he's very open about, and he doesn't hide it. He owns what he's done. And I commend him for that. He makes no excuse for what he's done. He owns it, and he's apologetic for it. And if he could, I know if he could take all of that back, obviously he would. I had the opportunity to go visit Michael after many, many years. I was in college in Nebraska when those things happened, and it was hard to deal with because here's someone that I loved going through this, and I knew to my, I would say if someone would have just helped him, there was the struggle with like mental illness and things of that nature. And being young, I didn't recognize that's what that was, but I knew he had went through a lot, and you could see that pain, and it hit me then when it happened. He was hurting, although it was no excuse. But if he could have been helped, if someone could have heard him, maybe these things wouldn't have happened. So there was a very long period of time where I did not get to speak with him. I spoke with him before it happened and did not get the opportunity to speak with Michael until around 2000, maybe 14 or 15, is when I spoke with him again. And I would try to follow what was happening with him through articles. And of course, as the internet evolved, I would search, and because I always worried for him, I always wondered about him, and his birthday would come up and I would wonder. And it just so happened that a family member reached out, and I was able to connect back with him and was able to get on the visiting list as I started speaking with him. And this is I don't know if you can see it. It's a photo, Michael and I, during one of the visits. And so that was fantastic to get the opportunity to speak with him and see this man, because literally the last time I'd seen him, he was a boy for all intents and purposes. And this, to see this man and this gentle spirit, and as he had stated, he had found Christ, and to hear him speak and then to read his writings and to just connect with him again in a different level. Not too many people know. I don't think that Michael had once been in the Navy. And he came home to Des Moines to visit, and I got to see him. And that was one of the plateaus that I got to see him where I thought, this is it. He's got it. And it was amazing to see. And then unfortunately, there was a setback, but that's not here nor there. But what my hope is that people will pay attention to what this man has given. It's a gift that he shares with these writings. He's factual, he's heartfelt, he's sincere. And the things like Sue had mentioned, he's able to speak from his heart and his mind, and that's incredible. And I know that if Michael's given a second chance, all of those things that he said he will do, because he's so passionate to help others get through what he's already been through, because he's able to navigate it. And I know that if he's given a chance, he won't waste it, as he said. It won't be wasted. Um, but he's this incredible man with these, he's brilliant to me with his thought processes and his writings and just how he analyzes things and he thinks things through, because there was a time when that man, when he was a young man, was unable to even navigate those thoughts because he didn't understand how to. And just to see him evolve is amazing. And so, like I said, I hope and pray that he's given a chance, a second chance, because if anybody deserves it, he does deserve a second chance. And I know that he would be able to help, I mean, unimaginable numbers of individuals. So that's what my hope is. Like I said, I've known him from the time of the age of 14 up until this moment, and that's over half a lifetime. So I think I know him pretty well through the
Yes.
ebbs and the flows and the rises and the falls. And he
Mhm.
continues to rise and stay positive. And as the gentleman had mentioned, I don't know how he does it. And then again, I do, because his faith in God is amazing. And I believe that's where he finds his strength and that positivity, and to help others keeps him going and keeps that positive, that that negative to positive vibe going. So, and again, I want to thank you for the opportunity, and of course Michael, for him to have that much love for me and thoughtfulness of me to be able to trust me to share my view of him. So, and I really don't even think it did it justice, but he's amazing, and I'm very proud of him. Very proud of him. So again, thank you.
Thank you very much. He did tell me that you might tell some stories on him that he had asked you not to tell. So,
No, kid
no.
stuff. It's kid stuff. It's kid stuff. Yeah, and he was a jokester. He was a jokester.
He
One thing I
still
can
is.
tell you, being a young girl when I first met him, he had this, and he's probably going to say, "Why did you tell them that?" The character Scooby Doo, that laugh that they Michael, I would have thought that it was him that was doing that laugh for that character, because I would make him do that for me all the time. So, but that's the only story I'll tell. But he's amazing, and I hope that he's given a second chance, because I know that he will do some good and he will help some people, and I won't be remiss to say he could save some lives.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for being here and
Thank you.
participating in this. Yeah, really, really appreciate it. And I know, and
Thank
as you
you.
know, Michael appreciates it enormously. And that goes
Thank
for
you.
all four of you. Thank you all very much for being here. I know this means a lot to Michael, and my hope is that it will also raise some awareness and mean something to the public, people like you out in the public, which is what the purpose of this particular channel is for. If you're interested in having Michael's paper, it's posted on the UU webpage, and I will let Phil talk about that for just a minute. And also, Phil, if you would put up, because Michael had said to me that he would love to hear from people. So if on that page you would also put up his address, his
Oh, okay.
physical address, and his Core Links address, his OMail address on that page. So if you want to tell people how to get onto the UU in order to be able to get a copy of this paper or to read this paper if they would like to.
Sure. I don't know that it's up there yet. I just put in the request a few days ago, and I haven't checked. But yeah, Ron, what is the is it uusic.org?
Yeah, uusic.org. And to get to the prison ministry page takes a little bit of navigating. I always have to hunt a little bit to find it, but it's buried in there somewhere.
Oh, don't say buried. Oh no.
Well, not buried exactly, but you have to go through a couple of channels to get to it. But maybe we can try to find out, ask them if they can maybe put it closer to the top.
Yeah, I can't, I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared for this question, so I can't remember off the top of my head which link you go to, but it's really just a couple of clicks away. You go to one of the things at the top, and that will bring you to, is it members? And anyway, it will bring you to a choice of social justice groups, and we're the UUS Prison Ministry Team. It's one of 4 or 5 social justice groups. So if you find the social justice page, then we're, I think, the last one, and then you click on that, and to that, that's where we have some things attached to, and I will make sure that we that his paper gets put up there, and it will include his address, his mailing address. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And would you say the webpage again? Ron, would you say that again? You're
Ron,
muted.
you're muted, Ron.
You're muted. Ron, you're muted. Still muted.
Yeah.
Ash, you're
Okay. Sorry.
rubbing off on you.
I was trying to, I was on the other page trying to navigate to the prison ministry thing. So, but it's, yeah, it's uusic.org.
Okay, thank you very much. uusic.org.
Yeah.
So anybody who wants that.
Unitarian Universalist Society of Iowa City.org.
Yes, yes. So anybody who wants to read the paper or would like a copy of it, I believe it's going to be in a PDF, and would like to write to Michael. He would love to hear from you if you want to write to him. He has said that to me a number of times specifically, and he asked me to be sure to mention that. So I have done my job for this evening. I want to thank all of you for joining this evening. All of would encourage you, if you have any interest or any curiosity about people, lifers, well, anybody in prison, but this evening is about lifers in prison, and specifically Michael. And if you have any interest in commutation of lifers, please contact me. And also, I will encourage you to contact CURE of Iowa, the Iowa Justice Action Network, or Beyond the Bars. Any one of those 3 organizations can help you get involved if you would like to, or just give you more information. And I am more than willing to give you all the information that I have, which is probably more than you want. Again, my name is Sue Hutchins, and I am the person who you will reach if you contact us on the email. And my email address for this channel is iowaprisonperspectives@gmail.com. That's iaprisonperspectives@gmail.com. And I really would like to hear from you, and I'd like to hear your feedback. I also want to mention once again that there is a bill that is dropped a couple of days ago that is called, the name of the bill is SF 126, and that's Senate File 126 from the judiciary. And that particular bill hopes to raise the age of juveniles from 18 to 20, which would mean that anybody who committed a Class A felony, which is murder, felony murder, accomplice to murder, kidnapping with other charges, would then be sentenced as a juvenile if they were 20 years or under at the time that they committed the crime, which means that they would not get life without the possibility of parole. They would get life with the possibility of parole. And so far, the juvenile lifers who have been released, we have about 30 juvenile lifers in the state of Iowa who have been released in the last several years, and none of them have reoffended. On a national level, people who have committed heinous crimes and have received lengthy sentences, life or 50 years, we call 50 years as virtual life. So 50 years or more, even 25 years and more. The recidivism rate of them reoffending any kind of a violent crime is like, it's less than 2% on a national level. So we really need to pay attention to releasing people like Michael. back into society, because they do so much good and they have so much to offer, intellectually, emotionally, socially, all kinds of ways. So I would strongly encourage you to at least consider that, and consider also getting involved in helping to move that effort forward. Once again, it's Sue Hutchins, and I thank you very much for joining us this evening. And my email is iowaprisonperspectives@gmail.com. That's iaprisonperspectives@gmail.com. And thank you so very much. And thank you very much to our panel. And I will say good night.
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you very
you.
much.
Thank you all.